Michael Jackson was heralded as the king of pop culture because of his innovative music abilities and his dance move. He was known for introducing dance moves and techniques that are still being used by our youth today. Michael Jackson was loved by his fans, but most often vilified by the media, and this caused Michael to live his life in solitude. Approximately 40 years ago, the Jackson family appeared on The Ed Sullivan Show and released the first of many albums for Motown. What made the Jackson 5 special was their lead singer, pint-sized Michael Jackson. Even at the tender age of 10, Michael had an ebullient joy and charisma that was palpable and contagious on both TV and radio. Michael was practically raised in the entertainment industry, as his career started off when he was actually 6 years old. He and his brothers were groomed by their father, the demonic Joe Jackson, to become great musicians and performers. In fact, he beat it out of them. It was stated by Michael Jackson in many public interviews that his father would whip him if he didn't get the certain dance moves correct. And Joe also took his boys to any place that would pay to see them perform, and this included whorehouses in Indiana. Many of you have asked, was Michael Jackson another Illuminati MK Ultra mind-controlled slave? Well, Michael Jackson's march to superstardom may have very well been stage managed by the occult politics of the MK Ultra program. His talent alone was not enough. The road to the top may have necessitated sexual abuse at the hands of connected, powerful adults while he was still a child. He may have been passed up the pedophile food chain in order to receive the backing, marketing, and exposure that then made him a household name. He may have even been made more pliable by MK Ultra training, which involved tremendous psychological and physical trauma. Now, Bryce Taylor wrote a book, and in that book she relates that she and Michael Jackson and members of the Jackson family accompanied Bob Hope to a location where they were filming up-and-coming talent for TV. Reportedly, Bob Hope sponsored the young Jackson boys. In her book, Bryce Taylor writes, "Their father brought the boys in, and I remember seeing them taken into a side room where bright lights were on. They all had to drop their pants, and before their performance, a big man raped each one of them in a lineup." Even Michael's own brother, Jermaine Jackson, has suggested that his father may have arranged for Michael to be used by older men. Jermaine tells how his father had Michael join late-night hotel room meetings with important business people, and Jermaine wondered whether something happened to Michael at those sessions. He said he sensed that something was wrong because whenever Michael would come back, he would be sick for days afterward. And he wondered, what was Joseph doing? Michael Jackson said himself that he was beat without mercy by his father into complying with things that Joe had asked him to do. In 1982, it was also reported that Joe Jackson had Michael on estrogen shots ever since he was little to make sure that his voice didn't change. And this is why when Jackson was 24, he still sounded like a little boy. As a matter of fact, he kept that voice throughout life. Now, in the 1990s, a French medical researcher who wrote several books on opera and the long-term effects of vascular interventions, he obtained Jackson's medical history. And he recognized that Jackson's voice had all the characteristics of what was called a castrato. Now, for those of you who know music, that's a high-pitched type of voice that is very popular in opera music. At the time, there was no such thing in North America, but there was a European, and that is the altering of a person's voice. This was not done over here in the States, but there was a European tradition of castrating certain choir boys' voices so they would grow up to be what was called castrati. Why? Because the castrati or the castrato sound can only be done by a eunuch, and we all know what that is. A eunuch is a man that has been demasculinized. In popular folk culture, it is said that their genitals were cut off in order to give them this voice. But the fact of the matter is, it is done through the altering of a person's vocal cords. And the practice, although it was outlawed in 1870, just like a lot of other things that are outlawed, it still was done behind closed doors. Now, there was a researcher named Alan Branchereau who also confirmed that Michael Jackson had indeed been prescribed high doses of testosterone blocker from childhood up until his 20s. Thus, he had been chemically castrated by his handlers. And the medical reason given for this was that it was treating acne. But this is why, indeed, the fact that Michael's voice never changed. The fallout from this is revealed itself in all the strange and inexplicable behavior. Michael changed his face, trying to put distance between him and his past, but he never really could escape the man in the mirror. And before I go on, because this is going to be a pretty lengthy story, I know there'll be those of you who said, well, he suffered from a skin disease that lightened his skin. Granted, this was what we were told, but it didn't change the shape of his nose, and it didn't put the cleft in his chin. And so these things were done by Michael to escape that man in the mirror. At age 21, Michael broke away from his family and he began a successful solo career. But there was speculation that the CIA had used its MK Ultra brainwashing on not only him, but on Madonna, Kurt Cobain, Britney Spears, and Elvis. Now, I can state that I absolutely have no doubt that Michael was an MK Ultra variety slave. And he was introduced, I'm sure, by his father into the elite's bizarre system of demonology, commercial pedophilia, and more. I also have no doubt that he would have been terribly abused as a child, which may be the explanation for his obsession with children in public and privately, and especially in bed. His behavior in this regard reeks of a man who never grew up. And some of you may recall in your childhood when you had childhood sleepovers and you just wanted to play all the time because that's what being a kid is about. And here is a grown man who had his Neverland Ranch, which was built like a huge amusement park and zoo. And he had his pets and he had his toys and his things that made him happy because this was someone who never really had a childhood. And although there is no concrete proof that Mike was a pedophile, studies do show that men who were sexually abused by adult males in childhood will usually unconsciously reenact what was done to them with the next generation of males who are the age that they were at the time of the abuse. I didn't see the tiniest bit of love or concern in Joe Jackson's face when Michael was put on trial. I think Daddy Dearest simply took over to ensure that Michael didn't say the wrong things in public or in court. I think that, Joe held a thick rule over Mike and control and up to the very end. However, on the cover of the Dangerous album, the Freemasonic symbol of the one eye can be found, as well as a picture of a bald-headed man known to the occult as Aleister Crowley. This album in total was used to expose the Illuminati. Michael was beginning to break free of the MK Ultra mind control program, and he was starting to rebel. And I'm not going to read you everything that the occult symbolism states, but it's going to be here for you to read at your leisure. Just press pause and you can read what each symbol means. Now, many of you may not know that Michael had his own personal magician, and it was a person by the name of Majestic Magnificent. And this may be reaching, but for my assessment, I think it's possible that Majestic may have been more than just a magician. He probably was a CIA monarch mind control handler for Michael. And apparently there was enough mind control residue left over to dictate the way that Michael would treat his own children. He would have his children wear masks in public to protect them, but they were not allowed to see their own faces in a mirror at home. And this points directly to MK Ultra mirror programming, in which Michael himself he experienced, and now he was trying to prevent this from ever happening to his children. Hence the recording again, Man in the Mirror. In Michael Jackson, the Illuminati demonstrated their power to make and break entertainment idols, to choose idols for us, and to influence and control the popular culture through the change agents. The idols tell us how to act. We emulate them so that we too can be cool, sophisticated, androgynous slaves. This is how the common man finds his place in the New World Order. And although Michael Jackson was a very powerful and talented man, he was still a puppet of the Illuminati machine. Michael came into the musical order at a young age, and he learned the tricks of the trade. He had great mentors such as Quincy Jones and Paul McCartney, and by the time he was in his early 30s, he knew the business inside and out. We can honestly say that there would be no industry as we know it had there not been a Michael Jackson. But Michael would later become a serious problem, and he would be targeted and opposed by the same networks that he gave his life to. You see, beloved, Michael may have appeared to be passive, but he was very much a dominant man when it came to his business. Michael was not a pushover, and he demonstrated no fear when it came to rebelling against the elite. Now, from my vantage point, what really got Michael in trouble with the elite was when he tried to overthrow it. Some of you may remember the rant he had against the Sony chief, Tommy Mottola. Michael made a lot of power moves in his career, but his biggest power move was when he bought the ATV publishing catalog back in 1984. In this catalog was found most of the publishing rights to the Beatles, Little Richard, and so many others. Paul McCartney, who had originally been one of Michael's mentors, introduced Michael to the benefits of song ownership. But Michael would go on to beat Paul McCartney out and purchase the catalog himself. This would make Michael the enemy of the very elite that groomed him. Why? Because it gave him too much power. So yes, I believe Michael Jackson was indeed a sacrifice, and this can be easily proven. Blood sacrifices, they happen in threes, and Michael's death was no exception. On the day that Michael Jackson died, so did Farrah Fawcett and Sky Saxon. They were sacrificed as well, and this is how the sacrificing goes. They must make their offerings in threes. Now, Michael's sister, LaToya, bears witness to this in several of her interviews with Oprah and with others, where she explains how Michael was indeed murdered. She even goes on to say that they do the rituals in threes, and she further goes on to say that Dr. Conrad Murray was just a fall guy, and that there were other individuals in the background who were responsible. Michael was on this hit list to be murdered ever since the 80s, but the Illuminati, they work in cycles and they never do anything before its time. They had to begin by destroying his image because Michael had millions of fans, and eliminating him in the 80s would have caused unrest. Plus, the industry is all about extracting as much from their puppets as possible. So they wanted to milk the life out of him before he was thrown away. The system of occult that the rulers deal with in this modern world is based upon the ancient Babylonian system of deities. The Babylonians had 36 deities that they served, and if one adds up the numbers 1 through 36, they will get 666. Now, this is the true meaning of the infamous code of 666. It represents the many demons found within the Babylonian mysteries. And contrary to popular belief, the letters KKK actually have very little to do with the racist group that was founded in the South. The letter K is the 11th letter of the alphabet, and when you multiply 3 for 3 Ks by 11, they get 33, which stands for the 33 degrees of Freemasonry. After 1993, the Illuminati would attack Michael Jackson in many ways, sending agents into his home who would later charge him with child molestation and abuse. And they knew Michael loved children, and the elite always attack targets through what they love. And this is a heads up, people. If you are out there living wildly and you want to be into this entertainment business, I cannot tell you how many people write me and email me, how do I get in, what do I do you have any contacts? Let me let you know, be careful what you put on blast. Whether it's your wife, your girlfriend, your children, the things you love are the first things that will be attacked, especially once you become an asset to the powers that be. They will use those things to hold control over you. The media, which is the number one tool of the Illuminati, would go on to label Michael as a child molester and a homosexual. And although Michael would eventually settle out of court on the allegations, the negative image of him stuck. Dick Gregory reported that he visited Michael's ranch and Michael begged him to help him and said that they were trying to kill him. Now, Dick Gregory took Michael to the hospital, and the doctors claimed that Michael was dehydrated, and they had to hydrate his system for 24 hours straight. And this was exactly 4 years prior to Michael's death. So the ritual was being demonstrated. Michael was indeed a summer solstice sacrifice, returning back to the Ethers on June the 25th of 2009. As I stated previously, 2 other celebrities were sacrificed on the same day. And when you add up the date, 6/25/2009, that's 6 plus 25 plus 2 plus 9, it equals 42, which equals 6. If you count the other 2 celebrities, Farrah Fawcett and Sky Saxon, into the equation, you will get 666. There is no coincidence, and as I stated earlier, the number 666 represents the combination of deities that is worshipped by the rulers. The number 6 also depicts the hexagram, and many confuse this with the Star of David, but and that Star of David is usually associated with Jews. In truth, the 6-pointed star is an ancient occult symbol used to cast spells. And this is why it is called the hexagram, because when you put a hex on someone, you cast a spell. The other reason why the elite chose the number 6 for this particular sacrifice was because Michael's birthday was 8/29/1958. 8 plus 29 plus 1 plus 9 plus 5 plus 8 equals 60, which is 6. When rituals are performed, they have to be congruent to an individual's personal number. This, which represents, their vibration, according to the sciences of the occult. There are many esoteric reasons behind this obsession with numbers, and it's probably too many to go into here. But the occult story behind Michael's death was also linked to the number 25. Now, as I stated before, Michael Jackson got himself on this list because of his bold move in purchasing the rights to the ATV music catalog, and that contained the Beatles' music. This was in 1984. And 25 years later, in 2009, Michael was murdered. Michael was definitely under the control of the Illuminati, but he spent his life rebelling against it. Many people believe that Michael Jackson is still alive and that he actually escaped the death plot. They say no one was there at Michael's home at the time of his death except Michael and the doctor. There has even been conflicting stories about, coming from the Jackson family about Michael's death and the circumstances behind it. This isn't too far-fetched, though, when you understand world politics, because Hitler and others were said to have staged their deaths as well. With money and power, anything is possible. And I certainly can't say for sure where Michael is, because the only proof that we have is the media, and we know the media is designed to promote the agenda of the Illuminati. Michael can easily be said to be the most powerful man, or to have been the most powerful man in the music industry, and his estate is worth over $1 billion. And with the all the cheesy marketing and merchandising of his image, it's probably more than that. But it might be interesting to know that in March of 2010, Sony paid $250 million to the Jackson estate for the rights to distribute his music until 2017. If there was anybody who came close to freeing themselves completely from the Illuminati, it was Michael. And if he did make a deal with them to slip out the back door, I wouldn't be surprised. Sony wanted the publishing rights back from Michael, and Michael wanted his freedom back from the elite. So maybe there was a fair exchange. Once the matrix of the Illuminati is dissected and totally understood, nothing will surprise you. As always, thank you for watching, and please subscribe so you can stay in touch. I've got so much more to tell you about a lot of things. God bless.